I tried to tell my son, well, his wife, aka my daughter-in-law, is good for nothing. She's using him, but he doesn't want to listen because he's love-struck. Well, then she does something in front of a group of people and I can't sit on my hands. I'm going to protect my baby boy. That's why I blurted out this. This is something that's been going on for quite a while now, and I just really need to let it out. My son, who I'll call Mike, has been married for a little over 5 years now to the love of his life. Let's call her Sophia. And my husband and I have always wanted them to stay happy. That's why we always supported them in any decision they wanted to make, even if we or ourselves weren't happy with it. But now I feel like I've made the wrong choice in being so supportive. My son's being taken advantage of, and I feel like I have no way of stopping it. However, whenever we try to tell our son that, well, what we think about his wife, he gets mad and tells us that we don't know her, or we're just assuming things because we don't like her. Mike and I end up having a huge fight over this once, 2 years into him dating Sophia. Look, I get it. Love can be blinding, and especially if you're so young and in love, it's crazy, but is it really worth ruining relationships over? It almost cost me my relationship with him, since then I've always tried to keep my disapproval silent and just not let anybody know what I actually think about Sophia. I know I'm not in the wrong because my husband sees it too, and he agrees that she's not someone who's worthy of our son's time, but there's nothing we can do about it. The reason that we think Sophia is nothing more than a greedy person is that there's been a lot of instances where it's been very clear that she does not care for anything emotional or loving. Instead, she's only happy when she gets any sort of materialistic possession. The first I noticed this was during their first year of dating. You see, at the time, my son wasn't as financially stable as he is now, and so any massive expenses weren't easy for him. He was a fresh graduate and just began working. As his mother and I expected Mike to put a certain amount of his money into savings so he could have a better future for himself, but he'd refuse, saying that Sophia needed more clothes, or liked going on expensive dates, so he could not save up any money. I told him that Sophia needs to support him financially as well, if they're planning on having a long-term relationship, but he would always just shut me down. During these years, Mike saved almost no money for himself. He barely treated himself to anything he liked and would always spend money on whatever Sophia thought was good for them and their reputation. This was another thing that put me off a lot about her. She seemed to care much about her reputation, to the point where I didn't know if I was going crazy, or could no one else see the insane amount of effort she put in to make sure that no one realized Mike wasn't as rich as she made him out to be in front of everyone. She'd have him buy insanely expensive jewelry and branded bags, and when I asked him if he could really afford all this, Mike just shrugged me off and told me he was taking care of it. It wasn't until I forced him to sit and talk with me till he told me he's not getting any savings done, and all the extra money he gets after paying all the bills goes into buying Sophia whatever she needs. My son's always been very innocent, and I just feel like it's partly my fault that I protected him enough for him to not even realize that there are people in your life that only want good for themselves. But I tried making him see the truth while they were dating, so I don't understand why he won't listen to me and leave that materialistic girl behind. Anywho, as a mother, all I want is for my son to be happy in whatever he chooses to do. So, I decided to keep my mouth shut and let him live however he wants. It had been hard to do that since they've been dating for almost 4 years before they decided to marry, but I managed. The only one who knew about my true feelings was my husband, and, well, he too had become increasingly worried for our son as time went by. It was obvious as he was struggling financially, but Sophia was still out wearing designer clothing, bags, and posting about her luxurious lifestyle on Instagram.
and even going as far as demanding a trip to the Bahamas from my son, all this while they weren't even married. I thought that it was going to get better after they got married, but I just hoped that Sophia would realize that they would have to save up money for their future expenses as a family, but it seemed like it only got worse. Sophia figured that since she and Mike were now married, she would be the one making all the financial decisions in the household. It was obviously a very bad idea, but I did not want to interfere, so I stayed quiet and urged my husband to do the same. What I could not stay quiet about was when Sophia picked up a fight with Mike, because apparently the diamond he chose for her engagement ring was, and I quote, too small, and she needs a bigger one. Claim that she could not be seen with such a tiny speck of a diamond on her finger. I told her off for being too selfish and tried making her understand that this was all that Mike could afford right now. But she would not listen to me. Instead, she walked past me and out the house, slamming the door behind her. When I looked over to my precious son, he just shook his head and sighed like this was a normal occurrence in their relationship. After that, they both went back to a normalist, but I couldn't. I kept an eye on my daughter-in-law to see what else she had up her little sleeve. I just hoped that one day I'd be able to open my son's eyes and show him who Sophia actually was. The day it did happen was during their first anniversary. I received an invite from my son to attend their first wedding anniversary party at a very lavish hotel. One that I would never dream of setting foot into, let alone hosting an entire event. I was sure that my son had to get through very rough times to be able to pull this off, and as his mother, it just saddened me deeply, but this was his day of celebration, so I went in choosing to be happy that he could even pull this off. Well, we kept our gift at the table in front, along with the other gifts, but my husband kept tensing up next to me as I tried to find a place to put it where it would not fall. Upon asking what the matter was, James told me he felt like most of the guests were high-class people, some that we did not think our Mikey had any connection to. The gifting around ours were all wrapped in this extravagant-looking paper, and every single person there seemed like they were wearing nothing short of a branded clothing and jewelry on them. Our gifts seemed like it would be out of place, but I chose to ignore that feeling in my chest, because I knew that we put a lot of thought into it and that nothing could matter as much to Mike as our gift. It was a simple black picture frame that had their anniversary date engraved in the gold at the bottom, with a picture of the two at their engagement, just smiling at each other. It was a beautiful gift, and I spent a lot of time just trying to pick out the perfect picture that my son and daughter-in-law would enjoy. For me, this was one of the best anniversary gifts you could ever get, but I guess my daughter-in-law did not think the same, because her reaction threw us off completely, left us standing in the middle of just feeling humiliated. After dinner, I wanted to have a personal moment with my family, so I asked my son and his wife if they could come to the side so that I could hand them my present. Well, they seemed very excited, but I saw the smile on my daughter-in-law's face dim as she tore open the wrapping paper to find the frame. Obviously, I got really nervous seeing her expression. James and I put a lot of time and effort into preparing this for them, so I really wanted them to like it. But Sophia just sent me a nasty glance and dropped the frame on the table before walking away. Well, I've had enough at that point. How could she even treat me like this? She was married to my son. The least she could do is act decent or at least send a smile, or even if she didn't like the gift. I mean, come on. Well, my anger level was quickly rising up, and I was just so prepared to storm off from there and towards my very dear daughter-in-law, just to give her a nice piece of my mind. But James' hand on my shoulder stopped me. He told me to let Mike handle this since he's the husband, but I just didn't see the point. Well, honestly, If Mike could have handled this situation, he would have done so already, wouldn't he? All these years of that materialistic girl stomping her way throughout his life, and he did nothing to solve it, so how could he do it now? Don't all of you even agree with me? Anyways, I knew there was no way Mike could handle this, at least not in the way I wanted him to handle it, so I disregarded James' hand on my shoulder and went to go talk to Sophia. Now, I was not keen to start a drama in the middle of their anniversary party, so I tried giving Sophia the hint that I'd like to talk to her alone, and not in front of so many people who could easily hear anything we have to say, but she did not listen. So, I was forced to ask her if she liked our gift to her and Mike in front of all the people gathered there. What I did not expect was for her to start snarling at me, like I've done something terribly wrong. I expected her to at least have a bit of shame in front of so many people, but I guess money makes people shameless, eh? She starts telling me everything she did not like about the gift, calling it all kinds of names. I'm talking about cheap, useless, something that has no monetary value. I was shocked to my core, but I guess I should not have been very much surprised, because that was who she is, and I knew that from the very beginning. Still, it was a very surprising thing to see her berate my gift like that in front of so many people. People who I don't even know. I'm pretty sure everyone could hear her talk about my gift like that, but it seemed like she didn't really care that much. She kept going on and on about how she didn't care for the gift, that she needed something that was actually worth some money. Talking about how she only keeps brands around the house, name brands. Her entire reaction caused me to get hurt and angry. I felt like I was going to see red. I put so much thought and effort into planning a perfect gift for her, and this is what I get. Initially, I felt like I was overreacting, but seeing the hurt on my husband's face, I knew Sophia had gone way too far this time. I mean, I could not let her get away with this. Everyone saw what she did. They all knew what the kind of person she was. Berating her own mother-in-law in public over an anniversary gift? I felt like she just singled me out. Well, I tried to argue with her, so I addressed her guest and asked them if they think what she did was right, but of course, they disagreed. Anyone with eyes could see that she was only after money and that she did not care about my actual loving son, or even the sentiments and the things anybody did for her. I'd always known it, but seeing other people agree with me and figure out what kind of person she was, it brought me to another level of joy. I felt really bad for enjoying the way that her own guests were telling her off, being so selfish, but I could not help it. It was simply something that I've been bearing for years, and nobody would ever listen to me or understand what I was going through. Imagine having to watch your son ruin his life over a girl who cares nothing about him except for his money. It hurt me just to let her stay in my son's life, but there was nothing more that I could do. I stood there watching her rich friends tell her how ungrateful she was being and how this gift was perfect for the first anniversary and all that. It just felt really good to hear them saying that, and at one point, a friend of Sophia's even asked me if I've ever gotten anything from her, and honestly, I was pretty shocked. Wait, let me break this down for you. Sophia had known me for almost 4 years now. She was married to my son for a year, and not once had I gotten anything from her that indicated she even liked me back. Or, heck, even respected me. It's not about the gifts at this point, it's the attitude that's the problem. The fact that she used my son's money for everything she needed, but did not bother to get me a thing. Not even on my birthday or mine and James' 25th wedding anniversary that passed the year before. It was outrageous, and clearly, everyone there thought so too, because no one seemed to be letting her off the hook for this one. So let me ask you, am I the a-hole for saying that my daughter-in-law needs to step up, stop running after money? I don't think so. It's high time she realizes that she's not going to get love and respect from anyone if she continues being such a materialist. What is up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's story is a twisted one, with a mother-in-law having to deal with a daughter-in-law. Alright guys, there's a few updates we're going to hop into. I hope you're enjoying your day. Just take a second right now if you want to support the channel and click that subscribe button. It really does support me a lot, and I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and jump into the first update to see how the heck OP's going to handle this. So, as it turns out, Sophie's family was also on my side during all this chaos. Apparently, they were present at the party, and they contacted me the day after telling me how absolutely disgusted they were at the entire fiasco that happened. According to Sophie's mother, they'd always noticed behavior like this from her, but they did not expect it to get this utterly bad. You see, I asked them if they knew that she had demanded from my son these things this entire 4 years that they've been together, and they had no idea. Wow, how crazy is that? That woman did not even talk to her own family about her boyfriend who was now her husband. I asked her mother to tell me a bit about her behavior, so I'd get a better idea about it, but the things I heard from them are absolutely insane. I guess she was a very whiny kid or something, because according to her mother, she had a very concerning personality. Even as a kid, she was always after materialistic possessions, and her mother told me that all of them have noticed how Sophia would always come over and just talk about her husband's money. Nothing else. This is a bit weird, considering they've spent a lot of time together, so she should have known quite a bit about him, but it's never come up, and her brother even went as far as to mention that he thought my son was crazy wealthy, which all the money talk that her sister does. This leads me to believe that maybe Sophia initiated the relationship for money only, because maybe I'm just trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I've convinced myself that they've actually fallen in love. It was just a misfortune that she became obsessed with money while they were together. Although, hearing all this from her family's point of view, it feels like I never really knew the girl in the first place, and I wonder if Mike knows her too. Sophia had flaunted her money in front of her parents and even told them that she would be sending all of her stuff over to the house for, quote, safekeeping, since she didn't want Mike to worry about how they were even going to keep all of it safe in their loft apartment. But here's what I think. I think Mike does not even know where his money is being spent. For all my poor son knows, she's spending it on stuff she actually needs, but what is actually happening is that she's getting all these fancy branded things on his high debit credit cards and then hiding them in her parents' house. They even told me that they once had a talk about this to Sophia, where they asked her if she was sure they could afford so many things, because they didn't know where Mike worked and considered that they were both very, very young. They had their doubts. This is understandable, of course, and I applaud them for standing up to this gold-digging daughter. But their efforts went in vain when she carelessly dismissed them and told them to mind their own business, and that she and Mike can afford to spend money on all these luxuries any time that they want. They also told me they were concerned that she was just trying to fit in and mold with all her rich friends from university. And well, what not? But honestly, is this really the way that we should go about it? If you want to fit in, then you need to work hard to get to the level and not leech off of my son. This is what I told her family as well, but I think I might have offended them a bit. I did, however, apologize to them a few days later when we called to discuss the matter some more. I felt guilty for taking my anger out on them since they were not at fault in any way, so I just had to apologize, but they were very, very understanding. It was clear to them as well that their daughter-in-law needs a serious check with reality, and they told me that they would be willing to do that for us. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, because God knows how many times I've tried to have a deep conversation with that girl. But It just always either ends up with me arguing with Mike or with Sophia herself. It doesn't end well, and I don't have any hope for it to end well with this as well, but I can just hope for it if they can knock at least enough sense into that girl and she apologizes to me. I'm still very ashamed of her actions and extremely humiliated, and I would like a proper apology, not just from her, but from my son as well. Seeing as she did nothing to protect me and said humiliation while I stood in the middle of all the guests, listening to his wife talk terribly about my gifts and my, quote, cheapness. Update number 2. So, the day eventually came when I managed to talk to her. You could say it was something that took a bit longer than I expected it to. But it's something that happened, and I guess I should be grateful for it, but the entire process was just so messy. I'm not sure if it was the right way to go about it, but hey, I'm not complaining. So what happened after the first update was that the mother of my daughter-in-law promised that she would talk to her daughter and make her apologize to me and understand what she did was wrong. You see, explaining to her why her attitude was so terrible, I was told that she was a very smart girl and that she would understand perfectly, but I was a bit skeptical. Yeah, you see, even though the mother had told me that she would make her daughter understand and apologize, I had heard her daughter argue and say that she was not at fault here. Not at all. My blood boiled as soon as I heard that sentence. The entire thing was just so infuriating, and I just wanted my son to get the marriage done with. But I'm not exactly on speaking terms with them anymore. Not after everything that's happened, and the entire environment just feels very tense. I was not quite sure where to proceed from here, but I was going to just go with the flow of things, hoping that Sophia actually gathers enough brain cells to understand why she needs to apologize to me, and also to actually James as well. He put as much effort in the gifting as I did, so I wasn't really sure why everyone was so adamant on her apologizing to me, and not James as well. I called Sophia's mother to let her know my thoughts on this, and that I would not only be expecting an apology for me, but also for my husband as well. It seemed to be a tough job though, because all I could hear from the other side of the phone at the time was heavy sighing. Like she didn't know how she was supposed to handle this, but I guess as a mother, you really do have to take on the responsibility of making your child understand the consequences of their actions. So a few days later, I received a visit from my daughter-in-law and her mother, who seemed to be there just to make sure the situation doesn't get out of hand like it did the last time. It was very tense at the beginning. I for sure was not going to start the conversation, and maybe Sophia had the same thought as well, because for a good few minutes we just stared at each other in very obvious discomfort. It got to the point where her own mother had to intervene and start the conversation, but that's not who I wanted to hear the explanation from. The fault was in my daughter-in-law, and I expressed my concern that she should be the one doing the talking, not someone else from the sidelines. Initially, my daughter-in-law was very defensive. She kept trying to explain why her behavior was justified and how I was at fault to some degree too. She gave me an explanation that she was always too busy with university to actually have the time to get gifts for me as well, and that she wasn't planning on using all of my son's money on herself, but all it took was one reminder from me and my mother that she had the time to spend thousands on her designer clothing and accessories for her excuse to ring hollow. She did end up apologizing after that one, though, and asked for my forgiveness as well. Well, I forgave her, of course. I can't really stay mad at anybody for too long, but I did remind her that things will not go back to the way that they were. And if she wanted to spend so much money on herself, then maybe, she could contribute too. Before she left, though, she did ask me to talk to my son about the entire situation. Told me he was feeling guilty about it, and I do want my relationship with my son to get better, but I'm not sure if I can get over the hurt I felt when he stood there and watched the entire thing play out in front of me. Update number 3. As a concerned parent, I feel like I have every right to tell my son about what is right and what is wrong, no matter what age he has gotten to. It just so happened that this was one of the times when I had to make sure my son understood the severity of the situation and not just disregard it like other trivial stuff in his life. In his defense, he believed that his wife coming to me and apologizing was enough, but that doesn't change her behavior. It's been the entirety of their relationship, and I feel like the entire relationship's built on something this extreme. Surely there needs to be some sort of conversation about it. I sat there, stone-faced. When my son Mike walked into the living room, he had the audacity to come to my house and ask for forgiveness after he had put me through all this. I could feel the tension in the air as he sat down across from me, his eyes searching mine for any signs of forgiveness. But I was not going to make it easy for him. It had been easy for me either, never. He even spent a lot of time with me trying to get me to understand his point of view and to make me understand that what he did was out of love, and seeing his eyes filled with tears wasn't something that I could bear. So I forgave him, only after telling him that if he does something like this again, forgiveness is not going to be this easy. I tried telling him about his father and I told him all about how we managed our finances and how we made sure we had enough money saved to give him the life that he deserved. If he would let Sophia do whatever she wanted with the money and not contribute anything on her own, well, who was to say what kind of household their child was born into if there even was going to be one? It was unsettling seeing the expression on my precious baby boy's face as he realized he's been taken advantage of during his entire relationship. But something, just something had to be done to make him understand, and I was okay to be the one to do it. Update number 4. This is the final update by OP. Hey guys, this is probably going to be my last update. I'm not really sure what's going to happen after this, but as of now, my son has understood just how badly he was getting played. It hurts seeing him so low and unsure of himself, but I'm always there to remind him that his parents are with him and that we support him 100%. After that initial conversation that I had with Mike a few days ago, the one I mentioned in my previous update, he finally came to his senses and realized that what was happening was not normal, and that he wanted something else while all Sophia cared about was money and wealth. She wanted to show it off to the world, but all Mike wanted was just to start a family and live a happy and satisfied life. When Mike finally confronted Sophia about her materialistic behavior and lack of effort in their relationship, it was clear that it took him a lot of effort and courage to do so. I could see the pain in his eyes as he explained how her actions had hurt him and their relationship. However, Sophia's reactions and response was not anything that we were expecting. At first, she was defensive and tried to brush off Mike's concerns. She claimed that she'd already apologized to me as if that was enough to fix everything, But it was very clear that her mindset had not changed. She still saw Mike as the means to an end and a source of financial security, rather than a loving partner to cherish. Well, days went by, and when Mike and Sophia continued to argue, it became clear that their relationship was simply not healthy. Mike demanded that they take a break to sort out their feelings, and as his mother, I fully supported him in that decision. However, Sophia was not so keen about it, and even had the nerve to try to convince us to tell Mike not to take a break. Well, I was furious with Sophia's behavior. How could she expect to solve years of selfish and manipulative behavior with one simple apology? It was clear that her attitude had not changed, and she was only concerned about losing her financial security. Despite Sophia's pleas, my husband James and I refused to intervene and tell Mike to not take a break. We knew that it was important for him to have the time and space he needs to figure out his feelings and decide what was best for him and his relationship. He's now on a break from his relationship, and is simply determined to stay away from her at least for a few months. Just until the air clears in his head a bit, just to know and understand what he wants to do next. Sophia still tries calling and texting him, asking him to come back to her, but I'm glad I've raised my son just to be confident in whatever decision he decides to make. In my opinion, Sophia's trying this hard not because she loves our son, but because she's grown addicted to him and his money and is now trying to find a way to ensure that it does not get taken away from her. Especially because, as most of you are aware, breaks like this usually end up in divorce. And while that may be the best option, yes, I'm not entirely sure that Sophia and her family think the same way. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but this is what I feel, and I'm not ashamed to admit there's no sympathy in my heart for that dirty girl.
It's very rare when we get a story like this because Mike, aka the boyfriend of the story, usually does not see the error in his ways and he continues down the path of basically being in a destructive, toxic relationship. But hey, in this story, it seems like karma paid off to Sophia because Mike was done with her bullcrap. And if it wasn't for Mike's parents and OP of the story, that never would have happened. So guys, maybe you've been in a similar situation as Mike, or maybe you were the OP of the story and you have some experience from your siblings, or from your son, daughter. Let me hear your experience, guys. Drop it down below in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I narrate and animate stories every single day and try to find all the updates that correspond with it. So if that sounds like something you're into, subscribe, hit those notification bells. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic one.